Hey guys, Zack here, and this is my review of Danny Phantom. Okay, so this episode, Shades of Grey, is interesting because it is the episode where a minor character winds up pivoting into an antagonistic role, and I think that's a very interesting episode to talk about. So first and foremost, the episode opens up with what we find out. Dash is currently failing got a D on some sort of test, and he is currently very angrily chasing Danny through the hallway, with Danny even pointing out that even when it's not his fault, somehow it's still his fault. So he's of course racing through the hallway, trying to get away from Dash, who's trying to beat the shit out of him for something Danny didn't do, and essentially taking his anger out on Danny for reasons. But it's at this point where we're reintroduced to Valerie Gray, who, if you don't know, was a minor character in the second episode of this show, and is also, up until this point, been a minor character in this show. She's only appeared a handful of times, and she hasn't had a major role up until now. Now she is. But in any case, Valerie is currently showing off her new top to Paulina and a guy named Quan, who also has appeared in episodes up until now, but I haven't talked about him up until now, and this episode is why. But in any case, she's showing off her new top, and points out that it was worth it's a very cute top and worth every amount of her dad's money that she spent on it. And Paulina's holding her coffee, so she of course has brought it into school with her. But it's this point where Danny proceeds to bump into all three of them, and in the process accidentally ruins Valerie's top. And Valerie, of course, being one of the popular kids, is immediately upset and tells Quan to in her own words, be up the loser kid for her. But this is why I've saved Quan for this episode. Quan is essentially the nicest of the popular kids. And consider that's kind of a low bar to clear, being perfectly honest, because at this point none of the popular kids have actually done anything remotely positive good. But Quan is easily the nicest of them, because here's the thing: he sees what happens. He sees that Danny ran into them accidentally spilled coffee all over Valerie's shirt, but also understands it's an accident and refuses to beat up Danny over it. He only does it because Valerie essentially makes him. So at which point he proceeds to chase after Danny as well. So yeah, it's implied in this, and this is also not including the fact that he's also frequently the most friendly with some of the other characters, as in his Attack of the Killer Garage Sale. He also greets Danny with a happy face, with a big smile on his face, and obviously Danny in that episode was kind of going through some things where he was trying to be one of the popular kids and failing miserably. But it's still worth pointing out that he was otherwise the other popular kids didn't really give him the time of day, with Dash only really being nice to Danny because he had to be. But yeah, Quan, kind of a nice guy. I do quite like him. But in any case, I'm getting a little sidetracked. It's at this point where both Dash and Quan are chasing after Danny to beat the shit out of him. And at which point, Danny realizes that remembers that he has ghost powers, and uses them to get out of both of their war paths, which just causes them to run into each other. And it's at this point where Danny emerges from the school, now safe from both of the bullies. A bully and Quan, but still the point still stands. But in any case, this is when his ghost sense goes off, and he immediately goes ghost to try and deal with the threat. Only to discover that the threat is a tiny little puppy ghost dog named Cujo. And Cujo's just this little puppy dog, and Danny picks him up and cuddles him for a bit, pointing out that it's like that's like Dash, but with better breath, and points out that he can handle it. It's at this point, but it's at this point where Cujo demonstrates an ability he has, which is that he'll just randomly shapeshift into a bigger, more imposing, and more intimidating form, which, of course, Danny starts to realize is going to be a much bigger hassle than he thought it was going to be. But it's at this point where we are then introduced to Valerie's father, Damon Gray, who is revealed to work at Axiom Labs, which considering that which is implied with the, and there's an implication because Cujo has the Axiom Labs logo on his dog collar. We'll get to that. There's a connection there, but what we find out is that Damon is a designer of security systems. He is a security genius. He has created numerous state-of-the-art security systems and is currently working at Axiom Labs on a contract to design a new security system with the head of Axiom Labs. We don't learn his name. We don't know who he is. Confirming that that's great, and that's hopefully that means that they can now that they can phase out the guard dogs that used to guard the lab, and calls them a thing of the past. And of course, it's this point where Valerie is also with her father when he's giving the grand tour of his security system, and does point out that maybe now that means that she can afford to replace the top that Danny ruined. But it's at this point where as they're talking, Cujo just kind of barrels through the lab with Danny in tow and starts wrecking the place. And this of course winds up becoming a big problem, but for everybody involved, because Cujo isn't doing it deliberately, I should mention. Cujo's a dog. Dogs are unruly at the best of times if you don't train them. So, because of that, they will just pretty much wreck everything and be a little bit rambunctious sometimes. And Cujo, to be fair, is also a puppy, so that makes it, or at least implied to be a puppy. And again, we'll get to that. But of course, it's implied that he's a puppy, and he's just very rambunctious naturally. So he will just brutally attack brutally and overabundantly attack everything, like a guard dog, and also a puppy. And Damon, of course, sees Cujo and Danny accidentally tearing everything up with and points out that their security system will be able to more than take care of it. So he proceeds to activate the security system, but it completely misses because obviously Danny and Cujo are ghosts, and they just phase right through it in the chaos, resulting in Damon accidentally catching himself, his daughter, and his boss in the net instead. And of course. And it's at this point where Damon's boss is obviously very visibly upset over the fact that Damon's security system, in his own words, failed to catch a pacey teenager and his dog. And Damon quickly realizes he's been fired. But his boss points out that he's not just fired; he's essentially ruined because now nobody's ever going to want to work with him anymore. So. This results in this, of course, this results in the team in Valerie and her father essentially being forced to get rid of everything they own, and of course they start making a big old. They reveal that they have a massive yard sale outside their house, being forced to sell pretty much everything they own, with Danny, Sam, and Tucker, of course, admit that they see this. And Sam points out that it's not right that she has to lose everything with Danny adding that he feels guilty because essentially it was his fault that her life got ruined, and now she has to sell everything. While Tucker is very happy about the fact that is also upset, but also happy about the fact that means he probably has a chance with Valerie now. And immediately tries to ask her out because he knows she's having a bit of a hard time. And yeah, Tucker needs to read the room sometimes because he does this a lot. But it's established that he does this a lot up until this point. So yeah. And Valerie, of course, is upset that they're there because she points out that the news has already trickled down to the unpopular kids, and she insists that they leave her alone. But Danny, of course, does offer to help, but they also admit that they're not going to. They're pointing out that they can help move out some of the heavier stuff. But she tells them that she's fine. She doesn't need their help, and asks her to just leave them alone. But and of course it's at this point where Danny of course feels awful, but also points out that they need to. That's obviously the dog is partly to blame for that, for being a little rambunctious and ruining and destroying her dad's security system in the first place. And Sam, of course, points out that Danny needs to that of course it's nothing there's nothing Danny could have done differently. But Danny points out that the best thing he can possibly do is capture the ghost dog and make sure that it doesn't cause another rampage. Pointing out that that'll probably solve a lot of their problems. But of course it's at this point where Danny senses yet another. He has his ghost sense go off, and he has Sam and Tucker cover him. At which point, Cujo shows up again, grabs Danny by the ankle, and as you would expect from a dog, proceeds to drag him around like a chew toy. So this of course results in Danny winding up inside the moving van with Cujo, and destroying pretty much everything that was inside that they were planning to take with them. So yeah, because of that, Danny is essentially once again further ruined Valerie's life, and at this point it shouldn't have been possible, but it does get worse. So yeah, Valerie of course becomes angry about what happened, but of course believes that once again that Danny is responsible for something wrong going on in her life. So her bitterness only continues to cement, becoming increasingly angry. So, but it's at this point where it's the next day at school, and she is talking to what we'll find out in a bit. But she talks to the other popular kids, and they ask her if they're still on for the concert. But Valerie points out that she had to sell her concert tickets because money's been a little tight. She's been losing all of her things. Her life has kind of gone into a downward spiral, and she's not able to afford concert tickets anymore. But and of course points out that money is a little bit tight, which of course they're a little upset by that. But it's at this point where her friends decide to turn on her, because now that she's no longer one of the popular kids, now that she's no longer rich, she's no longer considered one of the popular kids. So she has essentially been voted out of the tribe, and is now forced to sit by herself with her so-called friends, telling her that they better not have sold the tickets. That she better not have sold the tickets to some losers. But and of course Danny is upset, pointing out that he keeps putting Cujo into the back into the ghost zone, and he keeps digging his way out. And we do see a scene of that where Danny at one point does throw Cujo back into the ghost zone, and Cujo just worms his way right back out, which of course points out that it's obviously something is setting off Cujo that's causing him to be rambunctious and rampage through everything. But of course Sam points out that there probably is something, and that maybe and figures that maybe Cujo is after something if he keeps very decisively trying to making his way out of the ghost zone. And meanwhile Tucker notes that Valerie really shouldn't be sitting by herself, and is very upset, and is kind of upset about the fact that she's essentially been isolated by her friends. So he immediately goes over to her and once again tries to ask her out. So, and pointing out that she's more than welcome to sit with him and his friends, and tells her that she should really, consider taking his offer. But of course she points out that she doesn't really need his charity and would like to just eat her bagged lunch in peace, especially since that's the only thing she can afford to bring for lunch anymore. But to this point where Cujo appears in the window, and of course Tucker tries to warn her about the fact that Cujo's in the window, but she's not really paying attention. But it's at this point where Cujo kind of intangibles his way into the school and starts once again rampaging around trying to look for. And Danny quickly figures out that there's clearly something at this point he needs to deal with Cujo again. But Sam just points out that Danny isn't much of a dog catcher, and of course Danny does return the sentiment, and then makes a really bad joke about who let the dogs in, which of course is obviously a very obvious joke on play on the words "who let the dogs out," and he even mentions that as a thing. But Sam just rolls her eyes at him, and he just kind of hides under the table to go ghost, and pointing out he'll be right back. And she just tells him to come back with some better jokes. At which point he proceeds to once again get into a fight with Cujo, but this guy also discovers in the process that Cujo seems to be looking for something. He knows that Cujo is clearly sniffing around trying to find something, and that's part of the reason why he's been rampaging. So of course he's starting to realize that maybe Cujo has some big deeper reason for constantly getting in and out of the ghost zone. But of course eventually they do start rampage. They do eventually continue to rampage through the school, and Cujo just kind of scares everyone half to death, and proceeds to before he and Danny wind up leaving the school and disappearing. But of course Valerie is very shocked about what she just saw, while Tucker points out that it's just ghosts and asks what are you gonna do, which of course causes Valerie to suddenly realize that ghosts are real, which of course causes her to have a bit of a momentary panic. But in any case, that night she is revealed to now be living in an old apartment, and what we find out is that Valerie's dad has been hired on to work security again, hoping that'll hopefully turn their luck around, because he's now working at Axie Labs again. The job he previously got fired from. But of course Valerie points out that that's great, and wonders how many of his workers is he allowed to have. But Damon points out that it's just him. He's going to be patrolling around in a security uniform as a security guard, and that is pretty much the only thing they're going to be doing. So unfortunately, for that reason, they're realizing that he points out that it's obviously going to be continue to be tight, because it's currently a trial run, as he points out. But with Valerie pointing out that if by any chance the whole security guard thing doesn't wind up working out, he can always use the uniform to deliver packages. Which of course then reminds Damon, pointing out that she actually did get a package in the mail. At which point she reveals that she got something from Wisconsin. He doesn't know what it is, but to this point where he leaves for a shift and admits that they'll figure it out. But this of course, and Valerie of course is a little confused as to who she knows from Wisconsin, even though we know somebody from Wisconsin. We've seen somebody from Wisconsin up until this point, and that winds up being the next big reveal. She then proceeds to read a note that says, "Heard you've been having ghost trouble. Hope this helps. From Vlad." At which point it's revealed that Vlad is sinisterly watching her from the window and then leaves. So and of course she starts opening the package and points out that she doesn't know who this Vlad is. she also remarks that she pulls out a laser pistol and points out that if it does what she thinks it does, she'll be very happy. But then of course she blasts it off and her father hadn't quite left for work yet. He's currently in the process of getting ready to go. But he hears something from the other room and doesn't fully understand what's going on. But she points out there's nothing, but also gives a sinister smile, and that ends up being a thing. But in any case, at this point where Sam then decides to give Danny a book on how to train dogs, pointing out that even though it's a ghost dog, that obviously Danny's been having problems with Cujo throughout the entire episode. Cujo's been a bit rambunctious. He's been attacking. He's been just not really attacking, just kind of rampaging through the school and wherever else. So for that reason. Of course, Sam points out that they were obviously that obviously if Cujo's a dog, that means he can be trained. But Sam also points out that Danny she also needs to go and can't help him train because Danny isn't supposed to be seen with her because he's a half ghost superhero thing. So she proceeds to make herself scarce. And sure enough, right on cue, Cujo is once again being very extremely rambunctious and starts running around the place. At which point, Danny starts reading tips on figuring out how to get Cujo to stop. So the first thing he does is figure out how to do commands and tells Cujo to stop. At which of course Cujo does, interestingly enough. And Danny picks up on that, noting that Cujo is weirdly trained. He doesn't fully understand why he's already trained. But he does note that it's a little bit weird. But and of course, it's at this point where they're suddenly getting shot at inexplicably, and then we find out why. We see a woman in a uniform who is heavily implied to be Valerie and later outright stated to be Valerie. But Valerie shows up in a ghost hunting outfit with her identity being obscured because throughout the entire encounter with Danny. But she starts chasing after Danny with a series of ghost hunting equipment, and Danny quickly realizes he needs to get Cujo out of there. So he tells Cujo to stay while he tries to deal with Valerie. And Valerie, of course, then proceeds to throw various weapons at him and other things. But obviously Valerie's a little bit untrained currently with all of her newfound equipment, so she's falling off. She also has a flying glider, which naturally will of course correct to catch her. But otherwise she's still trying to figure out all of her equipment, which of course goes okay with Danny. But she then proceeds to throw several saw blade type things at Danny's head, and they all narrowly miss, but one does wind up hitting him, and with Danny hurting Danny. But then Danny has a startling realization when he discovers that it actually hurts, and this of course causes him to panic because he realizes that he could very well die here. But it's this point where Cujo decides to disobey Danny's order and pulls him to safety and drags him off to where Sam is currently hiding, and of course Danny tells Sam what's going on about how he's being hunted by some weird ghost hunting person who he doesn't fully understand who is. But it's this point where Valerie proceeds to start chasing after them and tells Sam that she needs to hide. But Sam points out that it's too late and decides to do the only thing she knows what to do at the time to figure out how to hide Danny's identity, which is she pulls him into the bushes, and when Valerie flies by, she discovers Danny and Sam kissing. Interesting, which yeah. And of course, Valerie comments that it's gross that she's witnessing what she puts as loser love, but also admits that she always knew that the two of them would make a cute couple. At which point she leaves, and And Sam, of course, at this point, figures out that it is indeed Valerie underneath the in the ghost hunting outfit, but and points out that they're going to need to warn Tucker, since obviously Tucker is head over heels in love with Valerie. But she realizes that Danny isn't listening to her, because Danny currently has a very love-struck, goofy grin on his face, and she proceeds to ask him if he thought it was a real kiss, and he asks if she thought it was a real kiss, which both causes them to stare at each other a little bit awkwardly and not fully and kind of cutely, and but as I said, they are implied to be they do become a couple at the end of the series. So once you know that that's a thing, all of the foreshadowing just kind of starts building up, and you realize that they are gonna be a couple, and they're a very cute couple on top of that. So yeah, but in any case, the next day they do proceed to tell Tucker what they found out, and when Tucker hears that they kissed, he finds it to be the best thing ever. He's just like Tucker is just having a ball with the fact that the two of them kissed, even though the two of them are denying that kiss, claiming that it was a quote unquote fake out makeout. But and of course Tucker is just kind of goes but he also points out that if he can use that on Valerie, and they're also trying to warn him about Valerie, but by this point Tucker has left, and Tucker then proceeds to walk up to Valerie, and she proceeds to point out that she doesn't have time to talk with him because he's currently upset about the ghosts that have been terrorizing her family, and points out that she's very upset about them. But of course it's at this point where Tucker decides to tell her that's very interesting, and pointing out that he knows Danny's parents, and tells her that that Danny's parents are also ghost hunters, which of course she didn't realize she didn't know, and immediately starts flirting with Tucker because she realizes now that she can figure out more about ghost hunting from Danny's parents. So she immediately turns on the charm on Tucker, and Tucker admits that Tucker is very happy to do that. But in any case, they then proceed to sit in the auditorium and to go to the auditorium and during a pep rally thing, and of course Tucker offers Valerie to sit if they can sit with him, and Tucker and Sam and Danny both point out that no, she cannot. Which of course Tucker points out that of course she can sit with them, and they proceed to sit down. At which point Valerie mentions that Tucker told her that Danny's parents are ghost hunters, and both Danny and Sam are livid at Tucker for saying that. They're just angry about the fact that Tucker told her any of that stuff. But of course, as they're kind of sitting in gym during, well, actually, I think it's, I'm remembering now it is more of a a basketball game, which rather than a pep rally. I forgot the details because it's been a while since I've seen the episode. I'm doing these from memory. Should mention that, but in case, as Tucker is about to make the shot, as Stash is about to make the shot, Cujo suddenly barges into the auditorium, and once again starts rampaging through the school. And it's this point where both Danny and Valerie proceed to excuse themselves, and they proceed to leave, and they proceed to get into yet another fight, another encounter where Danny's trying to soothe Cujo to get him to calm down, and once again trying to figure out what he wants, while Valerie shows up and tries to exterminate both of them. And in the process, we find out that Vlad has apparently made his own version of the Fenton thermos. It's essentially the Fenton thermos but red. So yeah, he's designed it, Valerie is of course pointing out that now it's time for them to go say goodbye, but she realizes she can't actually get the Fenton thermos to open, so that's causing problems. And of course realizing that that's how they need to figure that. Realize, and Sam at this point tells Tucker that that's his girlfriend, which he thinks is kind of sweet, is kind of great, and proceeds to jump down to quote unquote help her. And he winds up laying on top of her, which causes Danny and Cujo to be able to get away without getting seriously hurt. But and of course this happens yet a couple of times where similarly they're in the middle, where similarly the two of them are in the middle of class and once again excuse themselves to fight again with again Danny trying again to try and figure out why Cujo is still what Cujo is actually looking for. And Valerie once again trying to hunt both of them, which of course winds up becoming a recurring thing. And eventually, Danny decides that enough is enough, and that he needs to figure out what Cujo is after, so that he can send Cujo back to the Ghost Zone permanently without him constantly worming his way back out. And of course, is this point where they decide to stake out the Axion Labs to figure out to pointing out that since Cujo was first spotted there and was first seen rampaging there, that was probably the best place to start looking. And Danny of course uses his intangibility to sneak around, but then discovers that Valerie's dad is working the night shift there. And Damon once again thanks his boss for the opportunity to work security again, but again it is a trial one basis, so his boss says that they'll just see how it goes. But but of course Danny then proceeds to tell Sam and Tucker that they obviously are that there's only one guard, but it's obviously Valerie's dad. And Valerie, of course, and Sam, of course, then proceeds to point out that they'll do the best, but also points out that hopefully one of them won't be a traitor and try to help Valerie's dad. And Tucker proceeds to point out that it's not entirely his fault, pointing out that he did use his PDA to hack into the security system and disable it so they can sneak in. And of course, with that, they proceed to they're more than prepared to get ready to face off against to go in and figure out what Cujo is after. But it's at this point where Damon comes to his daughter, who is currently just working on homework while he's busy doing his security route, and asks her and points out and tells her that he's taking a break to get food, and asks her if she wants anything, and she points out that she's fine, and tells her to hurry back so that they can continue to watch everything. But of course, at this point while Damon is out, the security alarm proceeds to go off, and Damon quickly realizes that it is in the middle of getting food when he realizes he needs to get back. So he immediately makes his way as fast as Axion Labs, and obviously he's a bit far away, so it takes him a while to get there. But it's at this point where Danny also ties Cujo to a tree because he using the Fenton Ghost Fisher, which it works as a basic leash. And it's mainly so that Danny can sneak around the lab and without Cujo bothering him. But that doesn't wind up going well because Cujo ultimately just rips the tree out from its roots and just charges straight into the tree. Charges straight into the lab with Sam and Tucker, who are currently in charge of watching him, point out that this is what's just Sam points out that she's more of a cat person because of this. But in any case, Sam. It's at this point where Danny and Valerie proceed to fight again, and he quickly realizes that it's and he does understand that it's Valerie in the costume at this point. But and does try to plead with her, pointing out that they don't have to be enemies. But she's ultimately not listening, and points out that the only good ghost that she's ruined her life enough, and she's not going to let her ruin it again. So the two of them proceed to fight. But at this point, Cujo barges into the room and gives her a big old lick and starts fighting and does start fighting her on Danny's behalf to defend him. And in the process, Danny winds up getting knocked through the wall, and he uses his intelligibility to not cause any sort of damage. But and while he and Valerie are fighting, he discovers an old dog kennel inside Axion Labs, and realizes that this is most likely what Cujo was looking for, and also in the process discovers a squeaky toy underneath one of the piles of now long abandoned dog food, and before Valerie can finish Cujo off with one of her weapons, it's at this point where Danny shows up with the squeak toy, and then starts playful talking in baby talk with Cujo, asking him if he wants his squeak, if this is what he wants, and if he wants his squeaky, and then proceeds to toss it to Cujo and tells him to now that he has what he wants, he can go back to the ghost zone and stay there. And of course, Cujo proceeds to pick up the squeaky, squeaks it a bit, is happy about the fact that he now has it, and then proceeds to fade away, presumably returning to the ghost zone permanently. Now that his desire to find his squeak toy has been fulfilled, and Valerie's a little confused as to what just happened, but it's at this point where Danny finally explains what's been going on. About how first and foremost, he clears up the misunderstanding that Cujo is his dog, because Valerie had been going off the delusion, off the belief that Danny and his dog were deliberately ruining her life on purpose. So Danny points out that it's not his dog, and that he was just trying to figure out what the dog wanted. Also proceeds to tell her something that the Dairy King told him not too long ago, that not all ghosts are evil, and that not all of them deserve to be destroyed and killed. And but ultimately, those words wind up falling on deaf ears, because Valerie immediately judo flips him when he tries to make peace, and she responds that similarly, not all humans are saps. At which point she tries to blast Danny again, but it's at this point where she hears her father coming in, pointing out that he heard the alarm go off. And Valerie realizes that her father can't see her like that, but like the way she is, but Danny merely tells her that that's not his problem, and uses his ghost powers to just kind of phase through the floor so that she can disappear. And of course they realize that her father is probably going to get Sam and Tucker realize that her father's probably going to get fired again. But Tucker realizes that while he may not be able to help with the ghost problem, he can help her with one particular thing. So he proceeds, and of course shortly after Valerie puts her ghost hunting equipment away and hides it in her backpack again, Tucker proceeds to walk out into the middle of the room and then proceeds to activate one of the traps remotely on his PDA so that he gets caught in a net. And it's at this point where Damon comes in, sees that Tucker's been caught in a net, and Valerie insists to know what he's doing there, but of course he merely points out that he came to quote unquote see her. And it's at this point where, also points out that he couldn't let her father get fired again. So, but of course Damon walks in, and his boss does point out that it's obvious that now that at least they know that their base is secure from teenagers, but also points out that Damon is still on thin ice. And while Tucker of course gets in trouble for breaking into Axion Labs, he and Valerie do share a brief moment together. Where they kind of share a look and do kind of stare at each other romantically for a bit, but of course the episode then ends with Tucker being reprimanded. But they point out that everything is kind of back to normal, sort of back to normal. But also points out that Danny proceeds to point out that he's still trying to figure out the mystery of where she got her ghost hunting equipment. And sure enough, right as Danny is saying that, Vlad suddenly appears somewhere from the school. He's currently hidden, and he's currently hidden where Danny can't see him. And he leaves a package in the school where Valerie can find it. And Valerie proceeds to pick it up and realize that her mysterious benefactor has yet again left her another package with more ghost hunting equipment. And but of course, even though Sam admits that he's hoping that Valerie will one day be able to regain her status as a popular kid, she does point out that she does know some way to get that Valerie might be able to get extra cash, reminding the boys about the concert tickets that Valerie had to sell. And sure enough, it's real that Sam used her already established wealth to buy the concert tickets, and is currently jamming out with Sam, with Stanley and Tucker, and also remarks that, ironically, they're sitting next to the popular kids, and Sam remarks that she can't believe they're sitting next to those losers, and that's where the episode ends. So yeah, there's a lot to unpack with this one. So first and foremost, this episode, of course, is about Valerie's pivot from a minor character into an antagonist. This episode formally introduces her as a rival ghost hunter to Danny, and also is trying to, kill all ghosts rather than, just catch them and release them back into the ghost zone, which is not a great thing, and that's going to, of course, cause problems for Danny in the long term. But also the point is that she got her ghost hunting equipment from Vlad, who is clearly keeping tabs on Danny, and it seemingly has created a rival ghost hunter to cause more problems for him. Like, specifically, she brought her a bunch of high-tech ghost hunting equipment that he most likely funded himself because he's immensely wealthy. And also the implication is that obviously Jack very much lives rent-free in Dad's head, in Vlad's head. That was established in his debut episode, but it goes beyond that in this episode, because it's confirmed in this episode that he's been copying some of Jack's homework. Case in point, he created his own version of the Fenton thermos, which Valerie was seen toting around at one point. So, obviously he's been copying a lot of her work, a lot of Jack's work, in an effort to kind of, quote unquote, beat him. So, even though, let's be perfectly honest, Vlad's rich. He's already winning at life. Obviously, we've already established that his rivalry with Jack that his hatred of Jack is ironic, because Jack. Well, Jack believes that he didn't really get the opportunity to, have what he believes was rightfully his, namely the wife and son that Jack wound up having instead. But obviously Vlad's winning in life. He's rich. He's rich. He's successful. He used his ghost powers to get all those things. But he's rich. He's rich, successful, but not happy. So yeah. Unfortunately, money cannot buy happiness, and Vlad kind of seems to know that. But yeah, continuing on, that does continue onward with the thread. But yeah, this is gonna be a fun thing, because now it's gonna continue the arc about how Valerie is now going to be a rival ghost hunter to Danny, and is most likely going to learn a lot of the ins and outs of ghost hunting, while also becoming a rival for Danny, because she's both trying to exterminate him and every other ghost in existence. So yeah. But in any case, that is going to do it for today's review. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on go check out my Discord. That's where I want you to go. Go check out my Discord. We're going to be doing We're going to be doing a watch along of a horror movie or something for Halloween. So I hope you guys will do that. I have narrowed down my choices to what I want to watch for a horror movie for Halloween, but I hope you guys are looking forward to that. I'm excited for that. But yeah, go check that out. The link is down in the description. You can also follow me on Twitter, but I don't recommend that because Elon's breaking Twitter. So he's a mess over on Twitter. What else can I say about that? If you've been on Twitter, if you followed the news, you know that Twitter's a mess because Elon bought it and isn't doing a great job of managing it. But billionaire's got a billionaire, I guess. But yeah, and then also if you want to help support me, go check out my Patreon, especially since this is a massive labor of love. I would appreciate it if you were to go and check that out. And yeah, go do that. The link is, of course, down in the description. Please go do that. It's only a couple bucks a month. I would appreciate that. And finally, if you want to see more content from me, then yeah, go check out my other playlists on the previous ones of these that I've done. This is my third one I'm doing now, so I hope you guys would go and check out the other ones. If you liked this one, I would appreciate that. But yeah, go check out Courage Month. Go check out Courage Month. Go check out Magus Month. Those two were the first. Those two were the first two that I did. This is the third one. I hope you guys are appreciating these big month-long celebration things. So yeah, I put a lot of work into them. I hope you would enjoy them. But in any case, yeah, that's gonna do it for me. So thank you guys so much for watching. Next time I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.